Open on Broadway. Irma La Deuce would close at the end of the year. But playing in New York Central Park with Joey Brown umpire and Julie Andrews catcher, Lucille Ball was up at bat. Tammy Grimes of the unsinkable Molly Brown. It was the 1961 Broadway show's Softball League. Lucille was a showstopper. Margot Moser of My Fair Lady argued with critic Joey Brown, who was still there to review Cyril Richard's performance. Richard had a hit. The Broadway show's league had a one-day run in Central Park, but it was suck-all.
Ceremony on first base. Starting off at first base is Bernie Gunderson.
How's it feel?
Should have really thrown it a little harder.
Number 14, South Carolina, Norelli, Ronnie Carlota, and his community bank kid, Macy Dumbo. Number 20, Nestor Castillo, and his community bank kid, Marquise Cooper, and his community bank kid, Tyler Bosco. Hodges, and his community bank kid, Carson Bosco.
Who's brought stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, for the ramparts we won, for the land of the free, and the home of the brave.
Now pitching for the Lucy-Desi's number 16, Brady Reed. This call of the bullpen is brought to you by AT&T. AT&T is proud to be the exclusive cell phone provider of the Jamestown Lucy-Desi's.
Welcome to Jamestown.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What'd you know about Jamestown? When you were finally told, hey, you're gonna come to Jamestown as part of a really opening for Joan Rivers, what'd you know about this place?
Nothing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Nothing. Nothing. I'd never even heard of it. I grew up in California, so we don't look outside of our own city and state because we're very self-important.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I did not know anything about it. But I honestly, this is so embarrassing. I thought it was in New Jersey for like 3 weeks. And then people had to correct me and they go, what are you talking about? It's New York. But I love it.
You thought this was New York City, right?
I thought it was some town in New Jersey, and I just didn't, I don't know. And it wasn't until I got here that I realized how quaint it was and how much history is here and, you know, how interesting it is. Yeah.
Here you are, the opening act for the evening with Joan Rivers celebrating Lucille Ball's 100th. And we're listening to the music of the celebratory parade. What's Lucille Ball mean to you?
I have all my interviews. I make sure that there's a parade behind me so that it can seem more important. Parade's for me, actually, so I have to cut this short and get out there. What was your question? Sorry.
Lucille Ball. What's she mean to you?
Well, I just love how she was so fearless as a comedian. Every comic, I think, really admires that in a performer, because you know how hard that is as a performer. To commit to something so much without fear of looking silly or looking embarrassed or doing it wrong. She was one of the best at that, for sure.
Were you destined to be a comedian? Were you the class clown in high school?
You know what? I was funny as a kid. Yeah, I was witty. I was funny. I liked to. I had the right sort of attitude and mentality as a comic. Like, I liked to deconstruct things. I liked to figure out why something was illogical. I liked to expose hypocrisy as a kid. So I definitely had that mentality. I didn't always crave attention. I could be really shy at times, like a lot of comics. I chose when I wanted to be the center of attention and when I didn't. Which is what I like about stand-up, is you're kind of choosing when to have people look at you. And then you can get off stage and you can go off in the corner and curl up into the fetal position.
At some point, you actually got on the stage, I mean, for the first time, and was it stage fright? Was it butterflies? Were you flipping?
Yeah, you know, my first show I did was in front of about 3 people, and they all seemed pretty incapable of judging any kind of performances. They were just 3 bar people at this small bar restaurant that I was performing at. So there wasn't a lot of pressure right there, but it's still nerve-wracking because you don't know what you're doing. For me, some comics have been performers in other capacities. I was not. I had never performed really, other than like once or twice. So yeah, it was hard, but I think it's one of those things, you're so new, you don't even realize what you're getting into. And that makes it a little less, makes you less fearful, you know? It's kind of like if you're swimming in the ocean and you found out later that there was a shark out there. I mean, if you knew ahead of time, you would have been scared.
Right.
But I had no idea what I was getting into. I was like 22 years old at the time, and, you know.
This may sound like a really strange question, but timing, tempo, gauging crowd comment.
God, you made it sound like if you're going to ask something sexual. You're like, Andrew, this is a personal question of a personal nature.
Yes, we can, if you want to answer, that's fine. But did somebody critique you early on, or were those guys? Comedy school, is there such a thing? Is there?
Not for me. I mean, I started in San Francisco, and no. I mean, you get thrown into the fire in San Francisco. There's very good comics that has a lot of comedy history. I wish somebody had told me what to do when I started comedy. Right. I would love for somebody to been like, look, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, this is how you're going to get better. I had to learn just by continuing to do it and by, failing a lot and figuring out what good comedy was and figuring out the difference between getting laughs and getting laughs off of solid, good jokes. Right. More laughs that are more satisfying to the audience, not empty calories, as they call it.
Your last night, your performance was F-bomb free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got to work at that.
I save that for the interviews.
Okay.
I'm going to drop a few right now. It is. I don't use profanity, and not to. I don't think there's anything wrong with using it. I actually enjoy quite a lot of very edgy, very dark comedy. That's just not the direction mine's at. Not right now, at least. And. A lot of times, if you're not going to be edgy and dark kind of the whole way and commit to that, then I think it's tougher. You might as well just be clean and light the whole way. because sometimes the crowd gets thrown off if you're lighthearted and friendly for 20 minutes and then you say a couple things that are really heavy and intense and mean. They get confused. I wish they didn't. I wish they gave you that freedom to switch gears, but they often don't. So that's pretty much why I'm just clean throughout my whole show.
You were sort of a counterpoint to Joan last night. Was that by design?
They did want somebody clean in front of her,
yeah.
And I think that's probably to offer some contrast, which makes sense. I think that makes sense to have a show where you're not having any of the comics overlap. Right. It's probably better for the audience. But yeah, that's one of the advantages of working clean, I think, is that people don't mind following you, right. And you can work, you can work any environment, any setting.
How did they audition you? How did they pick you up?
They, Rooftop Comedy, who's part of the people that put on the event, they knew about me because they know about a lot of the working comics across the country. And I'm assuming it's because they knew I work clean, although I don't know. And that's why they asked me, do you want to open for Joan? We're just going to have her people approve it. And her people approved it. I don't know who her people are.
Right.
You never ask. When somebody says her people, you just kind of go along with it. You never want to be like, well, I need to speak with her people.
Yeah.
Her people need to talk with my people, because my people may not like her people. And that was it. They liked my, maybe they think they might have watched my Jimmy Kimmel appearance, which is on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So they probably just watched that to get a feel for what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she would have had the final say. I mean, they wouldn't have just slotted in anybody.
Probably not. Yeah, usually. Which makes sense. Usually you want to know who's opening for you, especially if you're in a big theater and it's 1,000 people coming. You want to know what's coming up before you.
Did you get a chance to talk to her much before? Did you?
Not a lot, but a bit. Yeah, it was fun. It was a thrill. Yeah, we talked about my appearance on Jimmy Kimmel a little bit. We talked about how we were going to do our intros and outros for the show. And it was fun to see her work and see her prep for her appearance. It was really neat to see everything that she does to get ready.
She seems like a hard-working lady.
She is. She's like all great performers with longevity. I feel like she knows what she wants. She goes after it. She is, every show matters. And she wants to make everything work from beginning to end. And that's what it takes sometimes, I think.
When first time you opened up for like a Jay Leno or something, were you nervous? Have you had a big name act behind you?
I am never nervous. I have nerves of steel. I can pass a lie detector test, even when I'm lying. I think you are nervous in comedy depending on what's at stake. I think when you're starting, you're probably nervous all the time. And then after you've done it for a long time, those nerves go away, but when there's a big show or something on the line, it's hard not to be nervous at all. If you're not nervous at all, it probably means you don't care, right. Which is not a very good place to be. You want to care. Right. So the trick is to take that nervous energy and, I think, just let it be there. Right. I think that's all you can do. And realize that sometimes, even on an important show, if it doesn't go well, then that whatever. There's nothing you can do about it once you're on stage. Right.
The host, I mean, I've seen YouTube, there's a few things of you on YouTube, and you get the interaction, they throw out a question. I mean, obviously, do you talk beforehand what question to kind of lead you into your little 2-minute shtick?
Yeah, usually, sometimes when you do interviews, especially on radio or TV, sometimes they have deliberate setup questions. Obviously these aren't, because I'm just free-forming it, as you can tell. And as a comic, you feel weird sometimes doing that because you don't want to seem overly rehearsed. Right. You want to seem like you're just talking. Yeah. But television and radio, you know how it is. They have such a specific time format. They need things to be so quick that they've got to have a question ready and you to have the answer ready, and that answer hopefully is a joke because you're there to promote your comedy. Right. And some people still don't quite understand that stand-up comedy is a performance and it doesn't always have a lot to do with how you just talk. Right. So they get nervous, I think, when they see you or hear you, and they go, well, he didn't sound very funny, not realizing that that's not your show. You know, your show is your show. In fact, Lucille Ball was supposed to be very mild-mannered and calm and conversational off stage and off camera. That's the story, right?
Is that right?
Yeah, it was when the lights and camera came on that she came to life. And that's when she became big and...
Well, she was, what we know from Lucy, at least she does, that she was really a strong, hard businesswoman and a hard charger. So it's like Joan Rivers, I mean, really would work awful hard at it and took nothing for granted.
Yeah.
Because there's always, I'm assuming, the fear of failure.
Yeah.
I mean, you walk out there and you say, oh, I really don't want to bomb. I really don't want to do that.
Yeah. Right now, I'm worried that you're planning on interviewing somebody else right after me.
No, you're it.
I'm looking, making sure there's no other comics coming in here.
You're it. You're the guy.
Okay.
You're the Lou Black of today.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why you're wearing black, because
Yeah.
it's outstanding.
I still like that you call him Lou Black. That's how long ago you must have met him, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because now it's Louis Black.
Right, right.
Yeah, and that's a bit much. In fact, just a sidebar, when he was coming here quite a bit, we saw him in New York and we went backstage, and it was Greg this, Greg that. He wouldn't have no clue who I am now, but it was just sort of fun knowing him on the uptick.
I bet.
Click, it he took off.
That must have been wild to see that.
Yeah. And same with DeGeneres. She was here, and literally with the next year, that's when she
Wow.
exploded.
She was one of my favorites. Is and was one of my favorites. Yeah, I like how Ellen uses just a lot of comedy tools. You know, physical, sarcasm, deadpan comedy, storytelling. Every comedy tool she uses.
Right.
And amazing how she can be not only clean, but usually politically correct.
Right.
Which is, once again, I don't mind if a comic's not politically correct, but I'm very impressed when they can be, because I know how hard that is.
Last night, I brought with me a guy who you may know, Mark Russell. Mark Russell, political satirist, comedian, and he's in his late 70s, but he's huge in Washington. But he stays at Chautauqua, came down last night, and just enjoyed your show immensely.
Really great.
Yeah, I mean, it was sitting next to me, and big belly laughs.
Cool.
But I often think...
Who's his manager?
His wife.
Yeah.
Do you guys critique each other, comedians? I mean, here you had 3-4 comedians early on.
Yeah. You know, normally you have to know a comic pretty well to criticize, not criticize, but to even give positive constructive criticism. This may surprise you, but comedians are very sensitive. Very sensitive. Look at my eyes. Yeah, comedians can be very, very fragile about their acts. To the point where it can be really awkward to have to tell somebody, hey, you know that joke you do? Well, that's an old joke from so-and-so, you know, from Henny Youngman or something, so you might not want to do it. Because sometimes a comic hasn't stolen a joke, but maybe they're doing a joke and they don't realize it's some old joke from Richard Pryor or something. It's an old George Carlin line. Maybe they don't know.
Right.
And yet it's so awkward to decide, should I tell that person? Because you want that comic to know, because you don't want them to waste their time doing that joke if it's already been done, you know? So you have to be pretty close to somebody to be able to either give them advice or tell them you need to drop that joke or your career's over.
Yeah. What do your parents think about your career here?
My parents love it. I mean, I'm sure they would hate it if it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
They would probably be like, oh, God, our son. Parade's getting louder there because they're waiting for me. They're upset. Is that the Andrew Norelli float? My parents love what I do, but I think they do because I'm funny and they've been to a show and they've had fun.
Yeah.
And when you tell them something like, hey, I'm opening for Joan Rivers, especially with somebody that they love, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, if I told my parents, hey, I'm opening for, you know, Kostaki Economopoulos, they'd be like, who?
Yeah.
Even though he's great and amazing. But when I say Joan Rivers, they go, "Oh, we know her. Okay, now you're legitimate. You're credible, Andrew."
Do you find that? Do you put that up on your Facebook? Are you do you do a lot of blogging in the sense of last night I opened up for Joan Rivers. This is this.
I don't do a lot of bragging. I do. No, you know what? I do put on my Facebook, of course, every time I have a show and what the show's about, but I don't talk about it that much. I'm not one of those comics that writes long paragraphs or blogs and I don't know why. I guess I feel like the work will speak for itself, hopefully. And I think if people come to see a show or if they watch my clips online and they like them, then they'll be the ones to talk about me and say that I'm funny. And I would rather have that than me saying I'm funny. It's not as fun to compliment yourself.
You know what's interesting?
What I'm saying is everyone get online and say I'm funny. Now.
The interactiveness, the YouTube, the Facebook, those, how important is that to you for people to see you? I mean, marketing. There was a time nobody would want to have themselves filmed and put out there, but now you're on YouTube, you're in Kimmel. It's a credibility.
It's a great question because it's an ongoing question in the comedy community. How important is that?
Right.
You have some people that think that it can make or break your career, your online presence. And then you have others that say that, it's practically irrelevant because it's so saturated with content. And the numbers you need for people to follow you or know about you online are massive for it to translate into success or financial success in comedy. I mean, you literally need 1 million people following you or looking at your stuff online to actually translate that into people coming out to see you at a show and buying a ticket for Andrew Norelli. God, now I'm speaking about myself in the third person. I'm becoming one of those people. I opened for Joan Rivers one night, and now I call myself Andrew Norelli. But you know what I'm saying? So that's, I think, the problem is people are online, and you might have 1,000 people. I mean, I've got 4,400 friends on Facebook, but that's nothing, though. That's nothing. You need like 1 million people. How do you get 1 million people? It brings you back to square one, the same way you always got 1 million people. You get on television and film. That's still what reaches the widest audience in the quickest way. Yeah. And then I think once you have those people from television and film, I think the online presence can help you retain them. For that, it's definitely useful. It helps those fans become maybe a little more rabid, a little more loyal, a little more interested in you. But I don't know if you can capture that 1 million without that.
How do you get on Jimmy Kimmel?
Jimmy, most of the late night shows, what happens is they have a booker for the show, and the booker often knows a lot of the talent around in the area because they've probably been in the business for a while. Jimmy Kimmel happened to be at one of my shows, which is very unusual. That almost never happens, that the host of the show is out at a show and likes you and tells you to call the booker of the show and get booked. So usually there's a booking agent. And back in the day, it's funny that we were just talking about YouTube, because back in the day, a lot of these booking agents would go to clubs. Now, I've heard some comics say, I don't know if this is true, I've heard some comics say that's not happening anymore. That these bookers are just having YouTube links forwarded to them, and they're looking at that. And then they're deciding whether they want you on the show or whether they want to come see you live to book you. So that's made it a little bit different.
It makes some sense, frankly. It's sort of a sifting advice.
Yeah, I mean, it probably is easier to sift through that way, but as a comic, you always prefer someone to see you live. Live, it's just more accurate and,
Did you have an idol? Somebody you looked up to as a comic? Say, I really like what she or he does?
Well, since we're in Jamestown, obviously Lucille Ball was my hero. My idol was God, it's so funny because people have asked this question a lot, but honestly, the funniest person in my childhood was my brother.
Sorry.
He was the one that had the most influence on my sense of humor. He was very witty. He was much older than me, so he probably just seemed more clever. He probably wasn't.
Yeah.
He was very witty. He was very funny. He was very good at imitating characters that we knew in our family and stuff. I wasn't a big fan of stand-up as a kid, and that's really bizarre, but I loved sitcoms as a kid. I loved them, which is funny because I look back now and I go, those shows were horrible. It was like I loved like Different Strokes and Facts of Life, and those shows were terrible, but I think they still shaped my sense of humor.
Did you go back to some of the older comedians, the Jonathan Winters, the Sitzies? Do you study any of them?
No, I'm so embarrassed that I don't know barely any of the comedy classics.
Right.
I'm totally, I should go and study them, but I don't know why. Sometimes I think it's bad to watch that much comedy, because then your brain just gets filled with all this stand-up, and the idea of stand-up is to come up with original ideas, and that's already hard enough, you know?
Last night, you were great, and last night you prepare. Do you have little? How do you cue from one joke to another to another? I mean,
yeah, that's a good question. Some comics are a little more organized and a little more deliberate with the order of their set and the words in their jokes. I'm a little looser, so I often don't know what joke or bit is coming next. I like to say because I give myself artistic freedom, but it's probably because I'm lazy. But I think the crowd can sense that spontaneity. They can sense when you're a little bit spontaneous and you're not overly rehearsed and robotic about it. You're kind of thinking on your feet at least a little bit up there.
Right.
So that's why I prefer to do that. I mean, you can only do that if you obviously know the bits really well and you've played with them a lot. So last night I knew what I was going to open with and what I was going to close with. And that was mostly due to time constraints and other things like that.
Did they tell you it's a 30-minute set or X? Did they give you time?
Yeah, they told me 25 minutes. And as happens on every important show I've ever done, never saw a light. You're supposed to get a light when you're time to wrap up. Never saw it. That's the story of my life, not seeing the light. You could take that as a metaphor, too.
Were you over?
No. Luckily, I was timing it on my watch, too.
Okay, yeah.
So,
yeah,
$50, Fossil Outlet.
So you have those routines where you sort of can without the audience presuming that you're looking at the clock, you know, that you can do that stuff? Or you got that technique?
Yeah, as long as you do it, you know, kind of subtly like this.
By the way, your routine on the look, you know, is outstanding. You have
good
great facials.
Good.
Yeah, that had Mark Russell on the ground.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
because I had a blast.
It was just terrific. So what's next?
Well, what is next? Let's see. I opened for Joan Rivers, and then I do a coffee shop in Santa Monica.
There you go.
No, you know what? I do have a couple great shows. I have a couple of great shows next week. Wednesday and Thursday of next week, I will be performing at one of my favorite clubs in the world, Comedy and Magic Club in Hermosa Beach. And that's Wednesday and Thursday, and this stuff is on my Facebook, or you can Facebook me if you want to know. That club is great. That club has amazing crowds, smart, attentive. It's in LA County, but it doesn't have that jaded LA vibe to it.
Yeah.
You know, which is fine. Those are fine on certain nights as well. But yeah, these are the sweet people.
Did you get yourself mentally prepared? Like last night, you looked up, probably opened up the curtain, and said, "Oh my God, there's 1,000 people. They seem normal, and they're not been drinking."
Yeah.
Is that a different mindset than going out and seeing the guys who've just finished their tables of pizza and you see all of the empty containers of beer and stuff?
Yeah, well, you know what? I think it's much easier to see that 1,000 people in a theater haven't been drinking, because I know what to expect there. I know they're going to be good. The guys that just drank beer and pizza, and I know that it could be horrible, it could be great, it could be somewhere in between. There could be jokes that the jokes I didn't expect could do well, and vice versa. But either way, you can't worry about it.
When you get done with an act, do you go back and take notes and say, this worked?
I should. You know? I'd be a lot further along. Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Usually in my head, I kind of know what went the way it should have and what didn't. And the idea is, yeah, you should work on the good parts and the bad parts when you get home that night or the next day. That kind of is the process of building an act, you know, building a bit.
You want to go to movies at all? Is there another type of career here?
Sure.
Yeah.
What are you casting? Are we doing anything in Jamestown?
Sure.
It's the next Spielberg movie going to be shooting here. Yeah, I always love to audition for stuff, and I love acting, and I think it's great. I like to do comedic or dramatic acting.
Right.
Yeah. Anything where you can channel your emotions in an indirect way.
So you're sitting in Los Angeles and you're looking at the newspaper and say, I got the night off, and there are 5 of the best comics in the world. Who's the one you're going to like, the most likely to pick to go see that night?
Wow, who would I go see? 5 comics who are all living?
Yeah, all living.
I like to see Bill Maher because he's dangerous. I like to see Bill Maher. I think he says stuff that's interesting, and a lot of times when you get your own crowd, and obviously he has his own crowd, anytime you're a celebrity, you have your own crowd that's there, they know what you're going to say, they're behind you, and he still, I feel like, challenges even his own crowd. And I like that.
Have you met him?
No.
No.
Maybe your boy Russell.
Yeah, Mark, there you go.
Maybe Mark can introduce me to him.
Mark and Joan go back. It's just kind of fun. Even last night, they hadn't seen each other in ages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's around here, guys like Mark. Phil Donahue
Wow.
is often around here.
Is he really?
With Marlo Thomas. And I'm just significantly older than you, so I remember those days, you know. And it's just sort of fun to talk about. I interview these guys about history.
Wow.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. If you had as you look down this is the 100th anniversary of Lucy Fest, and the president or the chairman of the board of Lucy Fest comes up and says, you know, what can we do different next year? Do you know enough of what's going on here to know what they could possibly tweak and do differently?
Well, since I still have one more show tonight, I'm going to say things are perfect. Do not change a thing, Lucy Fest. That is a great question. What can you do differently? I think most of these festivals, the hardest part is finding the right venues and filling them. That's the hardest part. Comedy is very venue sensitive. Mm-hmm. It's got to be a venue where it's all, you know, like a movie theater. There's no distractions. All the attention can only be on the stage. And also generating, I guess, expectations from the audience about what's going to happen. The show's going to start on time. You know, there's going to be no talking. There's going to be no cell phones, that kind of thing. And you're going to get comedy. If there's going to be edgy comedy, the crowd's going to know it, right? If it's going to be a 2-hour show, the crowd's going to know it's going to be 2 hours long.
That had been so difficult, what you just did.
The outdoor show was tough, but I mean, I've done many.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a pro at outdoor shows. I'm one of the best at performing to quietness. Sometimes I shush the crowd to get more into my comfort zone. Yeah, I think some comics get insecure and worried if there's not a lot of laughter. That doesn't mean the crowd doesn't like you, first of all. Certainly it does sometimes. Sometimes it's silent because they just flat out don't like you.
Right.
But sometimes it's quiet just because it's quiet.
Yeah.
There doesn't have to be a reason.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they don't like you. They could be enjoying the show perfectly well. And you're just going to make it worse if you start to get either worried or insecure about it or angry about it. Yeah.
Paula Poundstone goes right into the audience, virtually into the audience.
Yeah.
That's her whole act.
Yep.
Back and forth, back and forth. Are you willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, if I'm not headlining, I don't know if it's proper etiquette all the time.
Yeah.
So I try to save that for when I'm headlining.
Right.
So like opening for Joan last night, I would never do that. But yeah, I love to interact with the crowd.
Yeah.
I love it. It can be a double-edged sword because sometimes you invite them to then talk. Some people don't understand the dynamic of comedy, that the comedian, you can speak when the comedian is speaking to you. You know, like you can answer a question and that's about it. If you don't follow that rule, then it doesn't work.
Right, right.
Because how is the comedian supposed to make a joke when you're talking when he's talking?
Right.
But usually in like a nice theater or something, people understand that. They can follow that. Yeah. These Jamestown people, they know. They know how to listen.
Yeah. See, that's probably Spielberg right now.
This is excuse me. This is CBS calling me. This is CBS. Hey, I'm doing an interview right now in Jamestown, New York. Okay? CBS. Yeah, maybe we'll do a show, maybe we won't. I don't know. Let me think about it. Sorry about that.
Go check with Whitney.
Sorry about that. So, yeah.
This could be the date for tonight. This could have made a Facebook moment here.
No. This is nothing.
Okay. The questions that often you get asked, what's the one I haven't asked you that you often get?
I get a lot often. How do you come up with your material? Who are your influences? When did you start comedy? How did your hair get so thick and vibrant? Do you tan often? What else do I get? I think you asked most of them. You pretty much asked a lot of the questions that I get. Yeah. A lot of people still think that comics... I think comics always want people to appreciate more how hard it is to come up with original material. A lot of the public thinks that you either are allowed to reuse old jokes that have been floating around, because I think that's the way it was way back in the day.
Milton Berle lived off.
Right. And people think that you can borrow jokes from your friends. People also think that comedians buy jokes, which they certainly do, but not a lot. And definitely if they're not famous comics, they're probably not doing that. People think you have writers, and once again, some comics do that aren't celebrities, but very few. And then also people think that if you do write your own material, that it's like you just go to Walgreens one day and you see somebody slip and fall by the toothbrush aisle, and then you just have a new joke about it. And that's not what it is. It's like that's an observation. Then you got to go home and figure out why is that funny, what's funny about it, what else is funny about it. How am I going to relay this to an audience in 2 minutes?
Do you have a muse? Somebody you can bounce this stuff off?
No, do you want to be my muse?
I'll be your muse.
Via Skype?
Yep.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Do comedians have that? I mean, do they get their, whether their best friend or whatever, saying, look, can you listen to this for a second? I'd like to try a 2-minute joke.
Yeah, I think they do, but there's nothing like just doing it on the stage.
Right.
Nothing's going to replace that.
Right.
I don't care if you have a comedy aficionado with you. You got to just do it on stage and figure it out. Yeah, that's the scary part.
When you're bombing, and I assume that happens infrequently, how do you exit?
Never happens to me. When I'm bombing, how do I exit?
I mean, it's just one of those things you just know.
Very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, you say,
Out the back.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. And there's, you know, when it's just kind of like, I'm not going to even get.
Yeah,
joke.
I don't worry about it. I just say goodnight.
Yeah.
I've bombed and then sold my merchandise in the back of the room.
Yeah.
I've bombed and then sold my CD and DVD.
Yeah.
That's how much nerve I have.
Yeah.
I don't care. I literally am standing there going, hey, do you want to buy some material from the guy that you hated for 45 minutes? For $10, you can continue this miserable experience. I don't care.
Yeah. Do you work with, are there certain comedians you like to work with?
Yeah, I like to work with Rocky Laporte a lot. Yeah, who else do I like to work with? I'm trying to think of the celebrity comics, you sort of work with them just here and there.
Right, right.
So I don't know if there's anybody that people would know who I like to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much has Comedy Central done for your profession?
Oh, I think a lot. I think Comedy Central's always been something that has obviously focused on stand-up, offered so many platforms for stand-up comics, allowed a lot of experimentation from stand-up comedy. They get behind stand-up comics and comedy in general, and they care mostly about it being good rather than it being, they want it to be popular, but
yeah.
I think their motto has always been, no, it'll be good first. And if we put out a lot of good content, then the popularity will come. And that's great, because a lot of television networks don't operate that way.
Right.
A lot of them just say, no, we want just whatever's going to be a hit. And we want to try to come up with ideas that are going to be hits right away.
Right. AndrewNorelli.net. Do you have an agent?
I have a commercial agent, but I don't have a theatrical agent right now.
You need one? Do you need one? In the sense of, because otherwise you're out hawking yourself.
Right, right. It would help.
Yeah.
If I was with the right fit, yeah. I would take an agent that I thought was the right fit. But you don't want to just take anybody, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you get calls from a lot of people saying, hey, I'd be happy to represent you?
That's what that call just was.
Oh, is that right?
I get them nonstop. Yeah, sometimes you have meetings and it's not always the right fit, and you want to be with somebody who you guys both want to be together. Otherwise, it's not going to do you any good.
You check with other comedians. Are there comedian-type agents or just entertainment agents?
Yeah, there's agencies that specialize in comedy,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now but the Rooftop Comedy Group, is it Jane? Who's the lady who introduced?
Well, there's several. Who was the one tonight that was
Yeah.
on stage?
Well, yeah, who sort of
Today?
introduced, who kept the,
Jen Corbett.
Jen Corbett.
Yeah.
Now, is she just facilitator for you guys, or do you know her from another life?
Well, she works at Rooftop, and Rooftop knows a lot of the working comics around the country. Yeah.
So it's not as
Because they run a big, popular comedy website. Yeah, and they are involved in several of these comedy festivals that happen around the country.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you work with them a lot?
Not me. They work, I think, with a lot of different comics. I'm one of the ones.
You're in the
I'm in the pool. Yeah.
Right.
I'm in the pool. I'm splashing around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 years from now.
Dive in head first. I don't care.
5 years from now, where are we going to see Andrew Norelli?
Hopefully back here in Jamestown. Headlining that theater.
That's right.
That's what I'm hoping. Headlining the theater. Bill Maher opening for me, maybe. If he's nice enough to do it.
Yeah.
Co-headlining. How about that?
Yeah.
Co-headlining with Bill Maher.
Yeah.
Even though we're completely different, our comedy has nothing to do with each other. Yeah. Just more work in TV and stuff like that.
You're a funny guy, and a very nice
Thanks.
guy.
Thank you.
Really. And we just can't help it. We're thrilled that you're here, and I have a sense
Thanks for having me.
we're going to be seeing a lot of you here. And now the parade, obviously, is just gone.
done.
I'm
It's over.
sorry. I apologize, because
That's okay.
you were probably the grand marshal, and you missed the.
They're having a
text.
parade for me in Buffalo, too, so I'll catch that one. Let me see if I still have time. Yeah, I got time for that.
Now, you go on tonight at 10 o'clock?
10:30
10:30?
Yep. At the Tropicana Room.
It's going to be a little different style. It'll be late at night. You're not going to have kids in the audience.
Yep. Gonna get buck wild at that one.
Okay.
That's where I'm gonna pull out my dangerous material about apples. I'm gonna get edgy. Talk about fruit roll-ups. No, my stuff will still be, you know, the usual stuff, but it'll be fun. Yeah, I think there'll be good energy in there.
Ray Romano, when he was just started off television, he also came here. Ray Romano. It was just kind of funny because he talked about his television program was like ranked 58th.
Yeah.
And he was just here doing a stand-up.
Yeah.
In between kind of seasons, and then of course the next year, Romano takes off.
Wow.
But like you, he was just, you know, not sure where it was all going to go.
Right.
He had a television show. It wasn't a hit.
That's why you got to enjoy the ride.
That's right, because you just never know. Well, Andrew, you're on a wonderful list, and I'm delighted you joined.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.